Hi, welcome to Energy and Intuition for INFJs, video 2, how to unblock your INFJ intuition and use it to improve your life. Now, in last video, video 1, we talked about why INFJs suppress their intuition, why we tend to block our intuition, and how this is a huge energy suck on our system and our life, all the different reasons behind that. In this video, we're going to talk about how to unblock our intuition and how to get back into a flow with life so that we can lead a rich, intuitive life. So before we get started on this video, there's one basic idea that I want you to hold in your mind as we go through all of this material. And that is, life is a web of energy. That is the perspective that we are using throughout all of these teachings. Life itself is a huge web of energy, and you are part of it. It includes everything. It's you, the people you know, the people you don't know, the planet you live on, the stars, the oceans, the animals. It's everything. We live in a huge interconnected web of energy. When you are blocking your intuition, when you're suppressing your intuition, no matter for what reason, maybe it's a safety mechanism, a coping mechanism from early childhood, you think it's going to keep you safe, whatever the reason, when you're an INFJ and you're blocking your own intuition, you are resisting the flow of life. You are resisting being a part of that web of energy. So things are going to be very difficult for you. You are going to end up in life situations that don't feel pleasant, that you don't want, you're not sure how you got there. And this is for those INFJs, if you have gone through a series of toxic jobs, or a series of toxic relationships, or a series of toxic roommates, if you're like, I don't know what's going on, but the people and the situations that I seem to attract into my life are just not very good. And I don't have a very good time with them. They feel difficult. They feel sticky and entangled and painful. And I don't know how to have relationships or work situations or life situations that feel like they're flowing, that feel like they're coming with ease, that feel like everything's coming together. This is going to be a core element that you're going to look at. Are you blocking or suppressing your own intuition? Are you resisting the flow of life? Are you resisting being a part of that big web of energy that includes everything? Okay, now that that's out of the way, we're going to talk about, first of all, how INFJs are highly anxious and highly sensitive, because that's a big key piece of this as well. If you're an INFJ, you already know this about yourself. You are highly anxious for no reason at all sometimes, or it seems like no reason at all. You are highly sensitive to noises, to smells, to other people's emotions, to intense things going on around you, to chaos in your environment, to world events. The list goes on and on. INFJs are highly sensitive, and our high sensitivity tends to play in to our high anxiety. We get overwhelmed easily. We get overwhelmed by all the stimulus coming into our environment, whether that's physical or energetic. Okay, so because of this, because we are so high anxiety and we're so high sensitivity, we tend to get attached to systems. And this is something that most INFJs know as well. I know there are quite a few personality types that actually envy our attachment to systems and our facility with systems, because on the surface, this shows up as us being very organized. And we do tend to be very, very organized. Some of us will even say, I'm a bit OCD when it comes to being organized. We have lists, we have categories, we have files. Everything goes in its place. Everything's on the calendar. We make plans in advance. We know where we're going, what restaurant we're meeting at. We've probably already looked up the menu and decided what we're going to order a week before we meet our friend at the restaurant. This is just kind of how INFJs roll. We like having all of these things in place because it soothes our anxiety. When we know what's going to happen, when we feel like we have some sort of certainty over the outcome, when we feel like we have a system in place and we can follow that system, we tend to be less anxious. So we get very, very attached to our systems. Sometimes this can be a good thing. Like I said, we are very organized. However, when we go into overdependence on systems, that's when we tend to run into trouble. This is something I talk about a lot for INFJ writers. Those of you who have done my video course, Understanding Yourself as an INFJ Writer, you may remember I talked about this same overdependence on systems and how INFJs can get very rigid about our systems, and then we don't want to be flexible. We don't want to depart from those systems. And we can kind of end up shooting ourselves in the foot because we don't make any space for anything new to come in. With intuition, the thing about intuition is it is almost always unpredictable. And it almost always brings you something new, a new insight, a new perspective, new information. There's something new that you didn't see before or that you weren't that thoroughly aware of before. It's now come in, you see it, and you need to integrate it into your consciousness, into your worldview, into your pre-existing perspective on the situation. This can be hard for INFJs. That unpredictable nature and that new nature can make our intuition feel risky to us. There are 3 keys to unblocking our intuition. I'm going to say these 3 keys, we're going to go into them, and then I'm going to say them again because they're very important. If you're taking notes, please write this down. 3 keys to unblocking INFJ intuition. Number 1 is trust. Trust is a huge one. Number 2 is vulnerability. And number 3 is intimacy. Trust, vulnerability, and intimacy. So let's take those one by one. Trust. This is a very tough one for INFJs. I will be very honest with you. If you are an INFJ, chances are you have trust issues. Many INFJs had traumatic childhood experiences, very hard childhood experiences. We've experienced a lot of betrayal in relationships with others. We tend to not do relationships the same way as others. We expect full authenticity, full transparency, full honest communication. It can be very shocking to us when we are in a relationship with someone and it turns out they do not have those same values. And we tend to have a history of betrayal from others because we do tend to attract people who are dysfunctional, in a lot of pain, maybe addicted, going through some very painful life situations that makes them lash out. This is, again, the INFJ door slam, which I've talked about at length in other places when we've just had enough from these toxic relationships. So we do tend to have trust issues. However, if you are serious about unblocking your intuition, you're going to have to work on the trust issues because that's the first step to receiving intuition is trusting it. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to 1000% trust it right off the bat. That doesn't mean that you get an intuition and the very next day you make sweeping decisions that change the entire course of your life. What it does mean is that you remain open and willing to adopt a wait and see attitude. This is very important for INFJs because INFJs don't really like to adopt a wait and see attitude. We tend to be impatient, we tend to be very decisive, and we use our decision making to soothe our anxiety. We use many, many things in our personality to soothe our anxiety. Decision making is one of them. We like things wrapped up. We want the loop closed. We want things decided upon. We like that. So it can be very difficult for us to decide to adopt a wait and see attitude. But that's exactly what you need to do when you get an intuition. That's the trust part. I don't know what this is. It feels like there's something there. It feels right now. I'm going to wait and see. Maybe a few days, maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months. I'm not going to make a decision. I'm not going to rush things. I'm not going to force a decision because I am feeling anxious. I'm going to trust. So that's number 1. That's the first part, trust. Number 2 is vulnerability. Another really hard one for INFJs. All of these 3 keys are very hard for INFJs. INFJs tend to really struggle with vulnerability. We are very private people. Again, because of our childhood situations, a lot of us grew up masking our true thoughts and feelings. We tend to be very performative. We tend to have a facade that we use for the world. If you are an INFJ who's ever worked in an office or gone to school, been in classes, ever had to function in a group of people in the outside world, you've seen this in yourself, that you put on a certain way of being. It doesn't mean that you're fake or that you're being dishonest, but it's your extroverted self. It's your public self. And for INFJs, there's a very strong division between this public self and the inner private self. Again, this does not mean that we are being inauthentic, but we are very conscious of acting differently than when we are alone than when we're with people. When we are with people, we tend to do things to decrease our vulnerability. We do not like being vulnerable. It makes us feel very unsafe. So some examples of this, we don't tend to share a lot about ourselves. We listen a lot to other people. We are more than willing to have other people share about themselves, but we don't tend to share our information with other people. We don't tend to express our true opinions. We tend to have very fiery, very intense personal opinions about things. We definitely have opinions, but we don't really share those opinions a lot with other people. We also tend to sculpt ourselves or chameleonize in a way so that we agree with other people around us. So if we're with an extrovert friend, we're more likely to act extroverted. If we're with an introvert friend, we're more likely to act introverted. If we're with a thinker friend, we're more likely to act like a thinker. If we're with a feeler friend, we're more likely to act like a feeler. This can also be true in the opposite way. Sometimes you'll find an INFJ who's contrary, and that's the public self we adopt. So with the thinkers, we're even more of a feeler, and with the feelers, we're even more of a thinker. Whatever way we go, though, INFJs have a very distinct public self that we use with other people. And this public self is a safety guard against showing too much vulnerability. The third one, intimacy. This goes hand in hand with the trust and the vulnerability. Intimacy is very hard for us. It's a matter of trust issues and being vulnerable, but it also has another piece to it for INFJs specifically. The intimacy part for INFJs, because our energy fields are so porous, because we are such strong empaths, and we get other people's stuff so easily. When we're around other people, if they are experiencing intense emotion, and maybe it's not like a loud aggressive emotion, maybe they're not angry, maybe they're just very intensely depressed. That can also be very intense emotion. When we're around others and they are experiencing intense emotions, we get flooded with that. Our energy field gets flooded with their emotions. Our nervous system gets flooded with chemicals. So intimacy, a lot of the time, can feel very physically overwhelming to us. If you are an INFJ who has noticed about yourself, I really crave connection with another person. I really want a soul connection with a partner or a soulmate, some sort of relationship like that. But when I get so close to someone, say I spend the weekend with them, I find that after a day or two or even a few hours, I just want to get away from them. I just want to be far away from them, and I don't know why that is. They haven't done anything. I'm not angry with them. We haven't gotten in an argument. I just feel this overwhelming need to get away. That's what's happening. The intimacy of the connection is overwhelming you. It's flooding your system, and you're desperately searching for a way out so that you can go recenter yourself and you can come back down to neutral. So that's why intimacy is also hard for INFJ. So trust, vulnerability, and intimacy. These three things are hard for us. If you're an INFJ, and I listed off all those things, and you're like, oh my God, that's me, it's okay. There's nothing wrong with you. You're just an INFJ. We naturally have problems with these three keys. However, these are the three keys to unblocking your intuition. You need trust, you need vulnerability, and you need intimacy in order to fully enter the flow of life, in order to fully be part of the web of energy and start receiving information from that web of energy. Okay, so how do we begin to heal these issues? Let's start with trust. How do we begin to heal trust issues? And vulnerability and intimacy comes right along with that. How do we heal these issues? In our culture, let me say this the first thing, we tend to have this mindset that we need to heal our trust issues and then start trusting people. And you'll see this with people who will say as well, like, I need to heal myself and then I can have a relationship. Now, there is some truth to that. Definitely, if you've got toxic stuff going on, dysfunctional stuff, trauma, pain from the past, and you want to go inward and resolve a lot of that stuff before you get into a relationship with another person. That's completely understandable, and that's a completely healthy thing to do. However, what we also see is this idea that I need to be fully healed. I need to be 1000% healthy, good, better, the way I should be. And that's a different mindset. That's more of a, I need to be good enough, I need to be perfect before I enter into this messy business of life, human relationships, my own self. That is not very helpful. That mindset is not very helpful. It's impossible to heal all of your trust issues before you start practicing trusting other people and trusting life. The way you heal your trust issues is by practicing trusting other people and trusting life. Now, this is usually where I get people saying, okay, that sounds good. That sounds good, Lauren, but what if I'm not fully healed in my trust issues? I start practicing trusting other people and I get burned. I trust the wrong person, I make the wrong decision, I make the wrong choice, and that person hurts me and I get burned. That's what I'm afraid of. That is going to happen. There is no avoiding that. When you are fully engaged in practicing trust in life, you are going to make mistakes. You just are. You're going to trust the wrong people sometimes. People are going to surprise you. People are going to disappoint you. People are unpredictable. That is humanity. Those are other human beings. That's how they work. You also are unpredictable and disappointing at times and flawed. And that's okay. Making the mistakes, making the wrong choices, trusting the wrong people, it's part of the process. By doing that over and over and then unpacking it later, okay, I had this relationship with this person, or I had this interaction, I felt this happened, what did it mean, what did I notice, what were the patterns, how does that link up with what I already knew? Doing that kind of work, that's how you heal the trust issues. When you are using your intuition as part of your practice of healing your trust issues, everything is going to come together in a much easier manner than when you're just purely coming from it from a mental place. In the last video, we talked about INFJ's overthinking and how when we go into overthinking, we kind of loop obsessively. We're trying to come up with the right solution, the perfect answer. This approach, we're going to step away from the thinking. Our goal is not to never make a mistake. Our goal is not to do the perfect thing or make the absolutely right choice that our intuition is pointing us towards 100%. Again, life doesn't work that way. Intuition doesn't work that way. A lot of the time, you're going to get partial information. You're going to get a partial match. You'll get piecemeal information and you won't have time to wait and see. You will have to make a decision right then, and you will just have to do the best with what you have, and that's okay too. But when you pair using your intuition with healing your trust issues, when you take these two together, there's a very specific approach you can use. This approach is, this is what I'm feeling. I'm going to trust that. I'm going to make a decision based on that, and I'm going to let go. Okay? So this is where the trust comes in. This is what I'm feeling. That's where you're clocking the intuition. When I talked to that person, I felt this way, or I saw this image in my head, or I got this kind of feeling, or I've been in this relationship for a while now. I'm feeling like this. I'm feeling like I'm seeing this pattern. I'm feeling like this is happening, right? This is what I'm feeling. I'm going to trust that. I'm not going to overthink it. I'm not going to second guess myself. I'm not going to keep seeking more and more and more rational and logical information to shore this up, which is something INFJs tend to do. I need proof. I need more proof. I need more evidence. No, I don't need more evidence. The evidence is that I am feeling this way. This is what I'm feeling, step one. I'm going to trust that, step two. Step three, I'm going to make a decision based on that. So this is what I'm feeling. Every time I talk to that person, I feel not good in my body. I feel panicky. I feel a constriction in my throat every time I talk to that person, or most times I talk to that person. I'm going to trust that. Something's going on. I'm feeling anxiety. I'm feeling a constriction. I'm feeling fear. I'm getting a fear response every time I talk to that person. My body doesn't like that person. Again, step 3, I'm going to make a decision based on that. I'm going to limit my interaction with that person, or I'm going to cease my relationship with that person. Again, I don't need to have evidence or rationalization. I don't need to explain it to other people. This is what's happening for me. It's real. I'm going to trust that. I'm going to make a decision based on that. Step 4, last step, I'm going to let go. I'm going to let go means I'm going to stop worrying about it. I'm going to stop blaming myself. I'm going to stop blaming that other person. I'm going to stop replaying it in my head over and over again. I'm going to stop second guessing or thinking if I should backpedal or make a different decision. The decision's been made. It's done. I'm going to trust it was for the best. I'm moving on. So those are the 4 steps. This is what I'm feeling. I'm going to trust that. I'm going to make a decision based on that. I'm going to let go. That is the 4-step approach for working with your trust issues. Now, vulnerability, key number 2. Let's talk about vulnerability. Like, as I said, this is a really rough one for INFJs. Vulnerability is hard for us. It's very easy for us, as I said, to create a safe space for others to share themselves with us. We tend to be very non-judgmental. We're very accepting people. We're very unconventional, and we accept a wide range of human behavior. We really do. We do not judge people. We're very compassionate. We're able to see all these different sides. However, on the flip side, we live in fear of judgment of others. We really have a hard time sharing our authentic self with other people. So what we tend to do, because it feels safest, is in relationships, we are the constant listener, we are the constant counselor, and we don't receive very much back from the other person. On one hand, we grow resentful of this because over time it feels like we just exist for the other person. And it's very draining for us, especially if we have other things going on in our lives. We don't always have the time or space or energy to sit and go over someone else's problems with them and act as a mirror for them. However, when we think about doing things differently and entering into an equal exchange with other people, or sometimes when we get into a relationship with someone like another INFJ or an ENFJ, someone who can match our ability to be the listener, that tends to freak us out, and we will withdraw and back away because we don't know what to do with that. We are so used to being the constant listener, the constant counselor, that freaks us out. It's hard for us to be vulnerable. So we start by taking baby steps and sharing ourselves with others. Now, those relationships that you already have in place where you're like, yeah, that person's a total vampire, they're a total drain, like they don't give anything back, I'm just their counselor. You're not going to be able to shift those relationships. Decisions will have to be made that you either cut them out or you limit interaction. But the relationships that truly do have potential, with your partner, with your cherished best friend, with another intuitive feeler you know, where you are aware that that person does have the capacity to listen to you and to hold space for you, that's where you're going to be doing this kind of work. That's where you're going to be practicing. Okay, when they ask me how my weekend was, I'm actually going to tell them. I'm not going to just say fine and then quickly shift the subject back to them, as I usually do. I'm going to share a few pieces of what happened to me. I'm going to share something I'm going through. So we're sharing little bits of ourselves, and we're also slowly letting go of our constant role as the listener and the counselor. That's how we work on the vulnerability piece. The intimacy piece, and this one is intense. We show up as our real selves. If you just heard that and you had like a mini heart attack, it's okay. INFJs feel very dicey about showing up as our real selves. On one hand, we want nothing more. This is the thing we crave in life. Totally being authentic, totally being ourselves, being understood, being seen. Most INFJs have a really strong core need to be seen by others, to really be seen in our fullness with all of our gifts and all of our beauty, in the way we see other people. We want that too, and that's understandable. However, that thought of showing up in that way, of really being seen, that can throw us into a spin because we have a fear of exposure. We have that fear of judgment. So Again, we take baby steps. We show up as our real selves. Not all at once. You don't have to rip off the mask at your workplace. You know, maybe you've worked in an office and no one knows that you've been, you know, a burlesque dancer for the past 2 years. You don't have to all at once spring that information on them. But you can slowly, over time, you know, tell someone by the water cooler that you're interested in art and dance. You like different dance forms, right? Kind of slowly get used to it. Slowly dip your toes in the water of showing up as your real self. We let go of the INFJ chameleon mask. This one's hard for us as well. That public self mask. That means we don't always have to be on. We don't always have to be positive. We don't always have to be the person who agrees and understands and reassures and comforts and heals and fixes and listens. We don't always have to be that person. We are allowed to have grumpy days in front of other people. We are allowed to be really quiet in front of other people. We are allowed to tell other people I'm feeling depressed right now. And maybe they miss our usual, are you an extrovert? I can't believe you're an introvert self. But that's okay. We are showing up without our mask. The last piece of this is that we realign with the people, places, and things that match our true self. Now, as you go through this process, right, you start showing up in the world, you start actually sharing pieces of yourself with other people, not having to be the counselor so much of the time. You start dropping that chameleon mask a bit. You start showing your true feelings. Again, this is slow, baby steps over time. As you start doing these things, your life is going to shift. The people and the places and the things in your life that are not in alignment with you, that are not a true energetic match, you're going to really start feeling that. And some of it's going to feel very unpleasant. Some of it's going to feel like a big disconnect. Some relationships, you'll be like, oh my, I can't even believe I'm still friends with that person. We have nothing in common. Every time I see them, they totally drain me. I can't believe I've been putting up with this for so long. I got to get rid of them. You'll have big, intense epiphanies like that. Other times, you'll just say, I used to want to go visit my family 3 times a year. That's feeling like it's not really a fit anymore. I don't have a lot in common with them. Maybe once a year would be okay, right? So some things are going to be a big, intense shift. Others are going to be smaller adjustments. Your job is to keep an eye out for what's shifting, what feels in alignment, what feels connected, what doesn't feel connected any longer. And when you have that feeling of, oh, I see now that something has not been in alignment for a long time, a relationship or a job or a life situation, and that needs to be adjusted, or that's shifting on its own, and I don't even have any control over it, that seems to be falling away out of my life. A lot of times grief can come up around that. Grief or loss, or you might want to cling on and say, but I'm so sad, you know, like I've known that person for 20 years. We went to college together. What do you mean our friendship's ending? Those types of feelings are very normal, and that's okay too. Just because you don't all the time feel absolutely delighted that something seems to be leaving your life, or that you can see now a relationship isn't as connected as you once thought, that doesn't mean that it's not time for that thing to end, that it's not time for that thing to shift. Again, your job is not to be absolutely thrilled about all of this or have a good day with all of this all the time. Your job is to really be aware and conscious of how you feel, where the energy is, and where you feel connected and where you don't feel connected anymore. And then align yourself with that flow of energy. That's unblocking your intuition too. The more you can keep an eye out of like, oh, I see how this is shifting. I see what's happening over here. I see this wave coming into my life. I'm feeling this kind of energy. The more conscious you can become about all of these areas, the more your intuition is going to flow. This is all ongoing, deep inner work. It's not going to happen overnight, and that's okay. Like I said, baby steps, going slow. This is also the key for INFJs. We tend to move at a slower pace than most other people. So taking it slow, that is right on time for us. So these are the 3 keys to unblocking our INFJ intuition: trust, vulnerability, and intimacy. Now, next video, video 3, we're going to talk about why we overgive to others and how we can stop. We touched on that a little bit in this video, but we're going to go into it deep, deep, deep in the next video, video 3, why we overgive to others and how we can stop. I'll see you there.